Three tiny knocks cut through the howling blizzard. When Marcus Frost Blackwood yanked open the steel door of the Iron Wolves clubhouse, his heart stopped cold. A 6-year-old girl stood barefoot in the snow, her lips blue, her body shaking violently. Blood stained her torn nightgown. In her frozen fingers, she clutched a teddy bear soaked in crimson. Her whisper shattered him, "Please, save my mama. The bad men are hurting her." What this hardened outlaw did next would change everything. Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from in the comments. Subscribe now and stay until the very end. This story will stay with you forever. The knock came at 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Marcus Blackwood heard it first. After 43 years of survival, 12 of them in federal prison, 27 leading the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club, his instincts had become supernatural. He could sense danger the way animals sensed earthquakes. And right now, every nerve in his body was screaming. "You hear that?" he said, cutting off mid-sentence. Tommy Bear Kowalski lowered his whiskey glass. "Hear what, Frost? It's a damn blizzard out there. Wind's been howling all night." Not the wind. Marcus was already moving toward the door. Someone knocked. "Nobody knocks on this door," said Danny Shadow Martinez from his corner booth. The former Special Forces sniper hadn't survived 3 tours in Afghanistan by ignoring his instincts either. Not cops, not rivals, not anyone with sense. Marcus reached the heavy steel door. His hand hesitated on the handle. 43 years of violence had taught him that doors could hide anything. Bullets, badges, betrayal. He'd lost count of how many times opening a door had nearly cost him his life. But something felt different tonight. Something he couldn't explain. He pulled it open. The blizzard screamed into the clubhouse like a living thing, bringing with it a wall of snow and ice. But Marcus didn't feel the cold. He couldn't feel anything except the shock that paralyzed his entire body. A little girl stood on the doorstep. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her feet were bare, buried in snow up to her ankles. She wore only a thin white nightgown torn at the shoulder and stained with something dark. Her lips had turned blue. Her small body shook so violently that Marcus could hear her teeth chattering, even over the wind. In her frozen fingers, she clutched a teddy bear. The bear was soaked in blood. "Jesus Christ," Bear whispered from behind him. The little girl looked up at Marcus with eyes that would haunt him for the rest of his life. They were dark brown, almost black, filled with a terror that no child should ever know. But beneath the fear, Marcus saw something else. Hope. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the storm. "Please, save my mama. The bad men are hurting her." For 3 eternal seconds, nobody moved. Marcus Blackwood had faced down Mexican cartels, Russian gangsters, and federal SWAT teams. He had survived prison riots, assassination attempts, and betrayals from men he'd called brothers. Nothing had ever frozen him like this, because standing before him wasn't a threat. It was a ghost. A ghost from his own past, risen from the ashes of memories he'd spent 4 decades trying to bury. "Frost." Bear's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Frost, what do we do?" Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't, because in that moment, he wasn't standing in the doorway of his clubhouse anymore. He was 7 years old again, hiding under a kitchen table in the trailer park in rural Montana, watching his father's boots pace back and forth while his mother screamed. He remembered the smell of cheap whiskey and cigarette smoke. He remembered the sound of flesh hitting flesh. He remembered his mother's voice, begging, pleading, apologizing for sins she never committed. And he remembered the cold. God, he remembered the cold. The night his father finally went too far, the night the ambulance came and the social workers followed. Marcus had stood outside in the snow for 3 hours because nobody thought to bring him a coat. He'd been wearing pajamas and bare feet, just like this little girl. Just like this. Frost Bear grabbed his shoulder. "She's going to freeze to death." The touch snapped Marcus back to reality. He moved on pure instinct, scooping the child into his arms with a gentleness that shocked everyone in the room, including himself. "Close the door," he ordered. "Shadow, get blankets. Bear, start the fire hotter." "Now, second." The men scrambled to obey. In 27 years, none of them had ever heard that tone in their president's voice. It wasn't anger. It wasn't command. It was something rawer, something more desperate. It was fear. Marcus carried the girl to the leather couch near the fireplace. She weighed almost nothing, just bones and cold flesh and trembling muscles. When he set her down, she didn't let go of the teddy bear. She clutched it tighter, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. "What's your name, little one?" Marcus knelt beside her, bringing his weathered face to her level. His voice, usually rough as gravel, softened to barely above a whisper. Lily, she stammered through chattering teeth. "Lily Chen." "Lily," he repeated her name like a prayer. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Marcus. These are my friends. We're going to help you, okay, but I need you to tell me what happened." Shadow arrived with blankets. Marcus wrapped them around Lily's tiny body layer after layer until only her face was visible. Her shaking began to slow, but her eyes never lost that haunted look. "The bad men came," Lily whispered. "They came to our house. Mama told me to hide in the closet. She said don't come out no matter what. But I heard them hurting her. I heard her screaming." Marcus felt his jaw clench so hard he thought his teeth might crack. "Did you see these men, Lily? What did they look like?" They had pictures on their skin, like drawings, and one of them talked funny, like he was from far away. Marcus and Shadow exchanged a look. Tattoos, foreign accent. This wasn't random violence. "How did you get here, sweetheart?" Marcus asked. "How did you find us?" Lily's face crumpled. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, cutting tracks through the grime and dried blood. "I ran. Mom always told me if something bad happens, run to where the motorcycles are. She said the motorcycle men helped her once, a long time ago. She said they would help me too." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He didn't know this child's mother. He had no memory of helping anyone named Chen. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that a desperate woman had told her daughter to seek sanctuary with outlaws, with criminals, with men, the rest of the world called monsters. And that child had believed her. "Bear," Marcus said without turning around. "Call Doc. Tell him we have a medical emergency. Child with severe hypothermia and possible injuries." "On it." Bear was already moving toward the back office. "Shadow, I need you to gear up. Take Raven with you." Shadow's eyes narrowed. "What are we looking for?" "The girl's house. Whatever happened there, I want to know everything. Who took her mother, where they went, and Shadow." Marcus finally looked at him. "If you find anyone still there, you do not engage. You observe and report." "Clear." "Clear." Shadow disappeared into the back. Marcus turned back to Lily. She was watching him with those enormous dark eyes, her small hands still clutching the bloody teddy bear. Lily, I need to ask you something important. And I need you to think very carefully before you answer." She nodded solemnly. "The bad men who took your mama, did they say anything about where they were going? Did you hear any names, any places, anything at all?" Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then her face changed. Fear gave way to concentration as she searched her memory. "One of them, the one who talked funny. He said something about a cabin. He said they had to get her to the cabin before the storm got worse. He said someone named Victor would be very happy." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Victor, he knew that name. Everyone in the criminal underworld of Montana knew that name. Viktor Kozlov, the Russian butcher who had carved out a trafficking empire across 3 states. Women, drugs, weapons, Victor dealt in human misery the way other men dealt in stocks and bonds. And now Victor had this child's mother. "Frost," Bear's voice came from the doorway. "Doc's on his way. But we got another problem." "What?" "I just got off the phone with Razor in Great Falls. He says there's been chatter all night on the syndicate channels. Something big went down about 2 hours ago. A witness. Someone saw something they shouldn't have." Marcus closed his eyes. The pieces were falling into place and every single one of them was razor sharp. "The mother saw a murder," he said quietly. "That's why they took her. She's not a random victim. She's a witness. If Victor has her, then she's got maybe 48 hours before she disappears forever. They'll move her across the border into Canada, into the trafficking networks. After that," Marcus didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Bear shifted uncomfortably. "Frost, I know what you're thinking, but this ain't our fight. We call the cops, let them handle it." "The cops," Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Half the sheriff's department is on Victor's payroll. The other half is too scared to venture into his territory. Who do you think protected him for the last decade? Then we're talking about going to war with the syndicate. You know what that means? Men will die, Marcus. Our men. You think I don't know that? Marcus rose to his feet, his massive frame towering over the room. You think I don't understand what I'm asking? He turned to look at Lily, still bundled in blankets on the couch. She had stopped shaking, but she hadn't stopped watching him. Those dark eyes followed his every move, waiting, hoping, believing that he could do the impossible. 36 years ago, Marcus said quietly, a little boy stood in the snow and watched his whole world burn down. Nobody came to help him. Nobody gave a damn about one more abused kid in a trailer park full of broken families. That boy grew up hard because the world taught him that nobody saves you. You save yourself or you die. He turned back to Bear. Tonight I have a chance to prove that lesson wrong. Tonight I can show this little girl that there are people in this world who will fight for her, who will bleed for her, who will die for her if that's what it takes. And if we fail, then we fail fighting for something that matters. When's the last time any of us could say that? Bear was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. I'll wake the others. Full assembly in 30 minutes. Make it 20. Bear headed toward the sleeping quarters. Marcus turned back to Lily, kneeling beside her once again. Lily, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be very brave. Can you do that for me? She nodded, her small chin trembling. I'm going to find your mama. I'm going to bring her back to you. But while I'm gone, you need to stay here with some very nice people who will take care of you. Can you trust me? Are you a policeman? Lily asked. No, sweetheart, I'm not a policeman. Then what are you? Marcus thought about all the answers he could give. Outlaw, criminal, killer, leader, survivor. None of them seemed right. None of them captured what he felt in this moment. I'm just a man who made a promise, he said finally, and I keep my promises. Lily studied his face for a long moment. Then she reached out with one small hand and touched the tattoo on his forearm, a snarling wolf skull, the symbol of his club. Mama has a picture like this, she whispered. She keeps it in her special box. She says it reminds her of the angel who saved her. Marcus's heart stopped. What did you say, the angel? Mama says a long time ago, before I was born, an angel saved her from bad men. She says that's why she wasn't scared to send me here. She says angels always come when you need them most. The room seemed to spin around Marcus. Memories crashed over him like waves, fragments of a night 12 years ago, a night he tried to forget, a night that had changed everything. A young woman running through the rain, blood on her face, bruises on her arms, and Victor's men, 5 of them, closing in for the kill. Marcus had been alone that night, riding back from a meeting in Great Falls. He'd seen the chase, seen the woman fall, seen the men standing over her with their knives drawn. He hadn't thought, he hadn't planned, he'd simply acted. 3 of Victor's men died that night. The other 2 ran. Marcus had picked up the woman, driven her to a hospital in the next county, and disappeared before the cops arrived. He'd never asked her name. He'd never expected to see her again. But she had remembered him. She had kept his memory alive for 12 years. She had told her daughter that if she was ever in danger, seek out the motorcycle men. And now that daughter was sitting on his couch, clutching a bloody teddy bear and asking him to save her mama. My God, Marcus breathed. Frost Bear had reappeared in the doorway. You okay? Marcus looked at him with eyes that burned with something Bear had never seen before. Something between rage and purpose, between grief and determination. I know her, Marcus said. The mother. I saved her once 12 years ago. I saved her from Victor. Bear's face went pale. You're kidding. I wish I was. Frost, if Victor finds out you're the one who killed his men that night, then he'll want me dead even more than he already does. Marcus straightened up, his jaw set like granite. But that's not going to stop me. That woman trusted me with the most precious thing in her life. She sent her daughter into a blizzard barefoot in her pajamas because she believed I would protect her. He looked down at Lily, who was watching the exchange with wide, uncomprehending eyes. And I will protect her, if it's the last thing I ever do. The door to the back quarters banged open. Doc Foster hurried in, his medical bag clutched in one gnarled hand. The 67-year-old former Army medic had seen more gunshot wounds and knife injuries than most emergency room doctors, but his face went white when he saw Lily. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, he muttered, rushing to her side. How long was she out in that? We don't know. She just appeared at the door. Doc's hands were already moving, checking Lily's pulse, her temperature, her reflexes. She's hypothermic, but not critical. Another hour out there, and we'd be looking at a very different story. There's blood on her nightgown, Marcus said. And on the bear. I see it. Doc examined the stains with practiced eyes. This isn't her blood. Wrong color, wrong consistency. This blood is hours old, maybe, from earlier today. Her mother's blood, Marcus said grimly. Most likely. Doc turned to Lily, his weathered face softening. Hey there, sweetheart. I'm Doc Foster. I'm going to make sure you're okay, all right? Can you tell me, does anything hurt? Lily shook her head. Then she hesitated. My feet feel funny, like pins and needles. That's normal. That means the blood is coming back. Doc pulled back the blankets and grimaced at her toes. Mild frostbite. Nothing permanent, but she'll need to stay warm for the next few days. Can she be moved? Moved where? Somewhere safer than this, if Victor's men come looking. They won't find her here, said a new voice from the doorway. Sarah Raven Blackwood stepped into the light. Marcus's daughter, adopted but no less his own, stood tall in her leather jacket, her dark hair pulled back tight, her green eyes blazing with the same fire that burned in her father's. I've already sent word to the sisters in Missoula, Raven said. The shelter there can take her within the hour. Completely off the grid, no connections to the club. Victor's people won't even know where to look. Marcus felt a swell of pride. Raven had survived her own nightmare as a child, different from his, but no less brutal. She'd come to the Iron Wolves at 17, damaged and dangerous and desperate to prove herself. Now, at 32, she was one of the most respected members of the club and the fiercest defender of innocence he'd ever known. Thank you, he said quietly. Raven's expression softened for just a moment. Don't thank me yet. Shadow just called in. He found the house. And it's bad, Dad, really bad. Marcus's jaw tightened. How bad? 2 bodies, not the mother men, Victor's men from the tattoos. Someone fought back hard. The mother killed them. Looks like it, but there was a lot more blood than 2 bodies can account for, and drag marks leading to a vehicle outside. So she's wounded but alive. Alive enough to fight. Alive enough to be worth taking. Raven's voice hardened. Shadow also found something else. A message written on the wall in blood. What did it say? Raven met her father's eyes. It said the wolf comes home to die. The silence that followed was absolute. He knows, Bear whispered. Victor knows you're connected to this. That's impossible, Marcus said. Nobody knew about that night except me and the woman. And whoever the woman told. Raven's voice was tight. Dad, think about it. The mother keeps a picture of your club's symbol. She tells her daughter to find the motorcycle men if she's ever in trouble. She trusts you. She believes in you. Victor has had her for hours now. If he asks the right questions, Marcus felt the trap closing around him. Victor wasn't just holding a witness. He was setting bait for a much larger prey. He wants me, Marcus said slowly. He's been waiting 12 years for revenge, and now he's going to use her to get it. And then we don't go, Bear said urgently. We call in favors, get federal involvement. Federal involvement takes days. The mother has hours. Marcus was already moving, pulling on his leather jacket, checking his weapons. Besides, if I don't go, Victor kills her anyway. And then he comes for us. At least this way we choose the battlefield. You're walking into an ambush. Maybe, but I'm not walking alone. Marcus turned to face his brothers, Bear, Shadow, Doc, and a dozen others who had filed in during the conversation. I'm not going to lie to you. What I'm asking is dangerous. Some of us might not come back. If any of you want to walk away, I understand. No judgment, no consequences. Nobody moved. We're Iron Wolves, Bear said quietly. We don't abandon our own. That woman isn't one of our own. No, but you are. And that little girl, Bear looked at Lily, still huddled on the couch, still clutching her bloody teddy bear, still watching them with those enormous dark eyes. That little girl came to us for help. What kind of men are we if we turn her away? Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years, something warm and fierce and terrifying in its intensity. Pride, not in himself but in his brothers. In the family he'd built from broken pieces and second chances. Raven, take Lily to Missoula. Doc, go with them. Keep her safe until we get back. Raven nodded. And if you don't come back, then you become president and you burn Victor's empire to the ground. With pleasure. There was no hesitation in her voice, no fear, just cold, hard certainty. Marcus walked to the couch and knelt beside Lily one last time. The little girl looked up at him with eyes that held far too much understanding for someone so young. I have to go now, Marcus said gently. I'm going to find your mama. Will you bring her back? I promise. Lily reached out and pressed something into his hand. Marcus looked down and felt his heart shatter. It was the teddy bear, the blood-stained, battered, beloved teddy bear that she hadn't released since the moment she arrived. Mama gave me Mr. Buttons when I was a baby, Lily whispered. She said he would always protect me. Now I want him to protect you. Marcus couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. He could only clutch the small toy to his chest and make a silent vow that he would move heaven and earth to reunite this child with her mother. Thank you, Lily. I'll keep him safe. Promise? I promise. Raven stepped forward and scooped Lily into her arms. Come on, sweetheart. We're going to go somewhere warm and safe. As they headed toward the door, Lily looked back over Raven's shoulder. Her small hand reached out toward Marcus. Find my mama, she called. Please find her. I will, Marcus said. I swear on my life. The door closed behind them and Marcus Blackwood turned to face his brothers. All right, he said, his voice like steel wrapped in thunder. Let's go to war. The Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club had been founded 40 years ago by men whose society had thrown away. Ex-convicts, veterans, addicts, outcasts, the broken and the damned who had found family in each other when the rest of the world had abandoned them. They had done terrible things over the decades. They had also done remarkable things, but nothing Marcus realized had prepared them for this. We ride in 30 minutes, Marcus announced. Full loadout. Oh, Shadow, you're on point. You know Victor's territory better than anyone. Bear, you've got the heavy weapons. Everyone else, check your gear and say your prayers. What's the plan, Frost? One of the younger members asked. Marcus looked at him, Jake Torres, 23 years old, barely a year into his membership. The kid had potential, but he'd never seen real combat. None of the younger members had. They'd grown up in a club that had slowly transitioned from outlaw activities to legitimate business, from running drugs to running charity rides for veterans. Tonight they would learn what their fathers had known. Tonight they would understand why the Iron Wolves had earned their reputation. The plan is simple, Marcus said. We find Victor, we get the woman, and we make sure no one ever tries this again. What about Victor himself? Marcus's eyes turned to ice. Victor dies tonight. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and in a way they were. Frost. Doc's voice came from the back of the room. The old medic had stayed behind while Raven took Lily. Before you go, there's something you should know. What is it? I examined the blood on that teddy bear more closely. It's not just blood. There's a message written in permanent marker beneath the stains. The mother wrote something before she was taken. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What does it say? Doc held up a photograph he'd taken with his phone. The image showed the teddy bear's left paw where tiny letters had been scrawled in neat handwriting. It says, cabin by the frozen falls. Room with no windows. They come at dawn. The room erupted. She left us coordinates. The frozen falls, that's Miller's Creek up in the mountains. She knew. She knew someone would find the bear and bring it to us. Marcus stared at the photograph, his mind racing. This woman, Grace Chen, Lily's mother, had been taken by violent men, beaten, terrified, facing certain death. And in the midst of that horror, she had thought clearly enough to leave a message, a map, a lifeline. She had trusted that her daughter would reach the Iron Wolves. She had trusted that they would find the bear. She had trusted that they would come for her. 12 years ago, Marcus had saved her life on a whim. Tonight, she was counting on that single act of kindness to save her again. Miller's Creek, Marcus said slowly. That's Victor's hunting lodge. He uses it for high-value prisoners, people he wants to interrogate personally before they disappear. The place is a fortress, Shadow warned. I did surveillance there 3 years ago when we thought Victor was holding one of our guys. Guards around the clock, motion sensors, the works. Then we'll need to be smart about this. Marcus turned to the wall where a detailed map of Montana's mountain territory was mounted. The lodge is here at the base of Miller's Falls. In winter, there's only one road in this logging route through the valley. Victor will have it watched. So we don't use the road, Bear suggested. Exactly. We come from the north through the forest. It's rough terrain, especially in this blizzard, but our bikes can handle it if we move slow. And when we get there, Marcus traced his finger along the map. Shadow takes a team to eliminate the exterior guards, silently. While they're clearing the perimeter, the main force approaches from the south, creating a distraction. Victor will think it's a frontal assault and concentrate his defenses. Meanwhile, I go in through the back, alone. Like hell you do, Bear growled. You're not going in there without backup. I'm not arguing about this. Victor wants me. He's been waiting 12 years for me to show my face. If I walk in through the front door, he'll be so focused on finally getting his revenge that he won't notice Shadow's team cutting through his men like a scythe. And if you're wrong, if he just kills you the moment you show up. Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then you make sure he doesn't live long enough to enjoy his victory. The plan was desperate, dangerous, and probably suicidal, but it was also the only chance Grace Chen had. One more thing. Marcus pulled out Buttons the blood-stained teddy bear and held it up for everyone to see. This belongs to a little girl who trusted us with everything she has. Her mother, her safety, her hope. Some of you have kids of your own. Some of you remember what it's like to be helpless, to be afraid to pray that anyone would come to save you. He tucked the bear inside his jacket against his heart. Tonight we answer that prayer. Tonight we show Victor and everyone like him that there are still good men in this world, men who will fight for the innocent, men who will die for what's right. He looked around the room, meeting each man's eyes in turn. Brothers, let's ride. 20 minutes later, 15 motorcycles roared into the blizzard, their headlights cutting through the swirling snow like the eyes of wolves hunting in the darkness. Marcus Blackwood rode at the front, his massive frame bent low over his handlebars, his mind focused on one thought and one thought only. A little girl had trusted him with her mother's life. He would not fail her. Behind him, the Iron Wolves followed their president into the storm and into the mountains, into a battle that would determine the fate of 2 women and the soul of their club. And somewhere in the darkness, Victor Kozlov waited. His trap set his men ready, his vengeance finally within reach. None of them knew that before the sun rose, everything would change. None of them knew that the real battle wasn't for territory or revenge or even survival. It was for redemption. And redemption, as Marcus Blackwood was about to discover, came at a price that even the blizzard hit them like a wall of frozen fury 3 miles out from the clubhouse. Marcus felt his bike shudder beneath him as the wind tore across the mountain road. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. He could barely see Bear's taillight, 10 feet ahead, flickering in and out of the white chaos like a dying heartbeat. His radio crackled. Shadow's voice cut through the static. Frost, this is suicide. We can't see a damn thing out here. Keep moving, Marcus growled back. Victor's counting on the storm to keep us away. That's exactly why we push through. And if we ride off a cliff, then we die trying. Better than dying on our knees. The radio went silent. Marcus knew his men were questioning his judgment. Hell, he was questioning it himself. But every minute they delayed was another minute Grace Chen spent in Victor's hands. Another minute of pain. Another minute of terror. He thought of Lily's face, those enormous dark eyes, that trembling voice. Please save my mama. Marcus twisted the throttle harder. They rode for what felt like hours, though his watch told him it had been less than 40 minutes. The cold seeped through his leather jacket, through his gloves, through his bones. His fingers were going numb on the handlebars. His face felt like it had been sandblasted by ice. But he didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Wouldn't slow down. Frost, Bear's voice exploded through the radio. We got a problem. Pull over now. Marcus eased off the throttle and guided his bike to the side of the road. One by one, the other wolves pulled up beside him, their engines idling in the howling wind. Bear was already off his bike, crouching beside something in the snow. Marcus dismounted and pushed through the drifts toward him. What is it? Bear looked about, his face grim. Tire tracks, fresh, maybe 20 minutes old. Marcus knelt beside him, studying the impressions before the blizzard erased them completely. Two vehicles, heavy, moving fast toward Victor's compound. Reinforcements, Shadow said, appearing at Marcus's shoulder. Victor's bringing in more men. Or moving more prisoners. Marcus stood up, his mind racing. The message said they come at dawn. But if Victor knows we're coming, he might accelerate his timeline. How would he know? Because Victor isn't stupid. A little girl shows up at our clubhouse on Christmas Eve, and he doesn't expect us to respond. He's been planning this for 12 years, Shadow. He's thought of everything. Then we're walking into a trap. We've been walking into a trap since the moment Lily knocked on our door. Marcus turned to face his men, their forms ghostly in the swirling snow. The question is whether we spring it on our terms or his. Bear stood up, brushing snow from his knees. What do you want to do, Frost? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The wind screamed around them, hungry and merciless. Somewhere up ahead, hidden in the mountains, Victor Kozlov was waiting, and Grace Chen was running out of time. We split up, Marcus said finally. Original plan stays the same, but we move faster. Shadow, take your team and circle around to the north. I want you in position in 30 minutes, not 45. That's cutting it close, Frost. I know. Can you do it? Shadow's pale face hardened with determination. Consider it done. Bear, you take the main force and hit them from the south. Make noise. Make them think it's a full assault. Draw their fire, draw their attention, draw everything they've got. And you, I go in through the back, alone, just like we planned. Frost. I said alone, Bear. Marcus's voice left no room for argument. Victor wants me. Only me. If I show up with an army, he kills Grace and disappears into the mountains. If I show up alone, he gets cocky, he gets sloppy, and that's when we take him down. Bear looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he just nodded. All right, brothers. Marcus mounted his bike. You know what's at stake. You know what we're fighting for. Let's show Victor what happens when you mess with the Iron Wolves. The men split into their assigned groups, disappearing into the blizzard like ghosts. Marcus watched them go, his heart heavy with the knowledge that some of them might not come back. Then he turned his bike toward the mountains and rode into the darkness. The logging road that led to Victor's compound had been designed for heavy machinery, not motorcycles. Marcus fought the terrain every inch of the way. His bike slipped on ice, caught on hidden rocks, nearly went over twice when the wind hit him from the side. But he kept going, mile after mile, minute after minute. The cold became irrelevant. The danger became irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was the woman waiting at the end of this road. His radio crackled again. This time it was a voice he didn't expect. Frost, this is Raven. Do you copy? Marcus grabbed the radio. Raven, you're supposed to be in Missoula with Lily. Change of plans. The girl told me something you need to hear. What? She remembered something else about the bad men, something she didn't tell you before. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What did she remember? One of them, the one with the funny accent. He had a phone conversation while they were taking her mother. Lily heard him say a name she recognized. What name, Raven? The radio was silent for a moment. When Raven spoke again, her voice was tight with barely contained fury. Sheriff Davis. He said, tell Sheriff Davis the package is secure. Marcus nearly lost control of his bike. Sheriff Robert Davis. The man who had been their ally for 15 years. The man who had looked the other way when the Iron Wolves needed protection. The man Marcus had trusted with his life. That's impossible, Marcus breathed. I thought so too, but I made some calls. Davis went off grid 3 hours ago. His deputies don't know where he is. His wife says he got a phone call and left in a hurry. Raven paused. Frost, if Davis is working with Victor, then Victor has someone on the inside, someone who knows our plans. Marcus's mind was reeling. Raven, did you tell anyone where we were going tonight? Just the sisters in Missoula and Doc. Where's Doc now? He's right here with me. Why? Marcus didn't answer. His thoughts were spiraling into dark territory. If Victor had corrupted Sheriff Davis, who else had he bought? Who else had been feeding him information all these years? Frost Raven's voice was urgent now. What are you thinking? I'm thinking we've been played. Victor didn't just set a trap tonight. He's been building this trap for years, putting pieces in place, waiting for the right moment. The right moment for what? To destroy us, not just me, all of us, the entire club. The radio crackled with static. When Raven spoke again, her voice was steel. Then we make sure he fails. What do you need me to do? Stay with Lily. Protect her with your life. If this goes wrong, she's the only innocent in this whole mess. And you, Marcus looked ahead where the faint glow of lights was beginning to penetrate the blizzard. Victor's compound. Less than a mile away. I'm going to finish what I started 12 years ago. He killed the radio and pushed his bike to its limits. The compound appeared through the snow like a monster rising from the deep. Marcus killed his engine 50 yards out and walked his bike behind a cluster of boulders. From here, he could see the main lodge, a massive timber structure that looked more like a fortress than a hunting cabin. Lights blazed from every window. Armed men patrolled the perimeter, their breath fogging in the freezing air. Even from this distance, Marcus could count at least a dozen guards, probably more inside. He checked his watch. Shadow should be in position in 10 minutes. Bear's distraction would come 5 minutes after that. 15 minutes. That's all he had to wait. But Grace Chen might not have 15 minutes. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in 5 years. It rang twice before a gruff voice answered. Who the hell is this? It's Frost, Carter. I need information. Carter Reed was a former FBI agent who had gone private after a scandal involving evidence tampering. He was corrupt, unreliable, and probably the most knowledgeable person in Montana when it came to criminal operations. Frost, Jesus, I thought you were dead. Not yet. Listen to me. Victor Kozlov, his compound at Miller's Creek. I need to know the layout. You're going after Victor. Are you insane? Probably. Layout now. Carter was quiet for a moment. Marcus could hear him typing on a keyboard. Okay, I'm pulling up the blueprints. The main lodge has 3 levels. Ground floor is entertainment, kitchen, that kind of thing. Second floor is his living quarters. Third floor, Carter paused. Third floor is listed as storage, but there's some weird stuff in the electrical plans. Heavy-duty wiring, soundproofing, reinforced doors. That's where he keeps his prisoners. Most likely, there's a service entrance on the north side near the generator building. That's probably your best bet for getting in unnoticed. What about guards? Inside, no idea, but Victor's paranoid. He probably has cameras everywhere, maybe motion sensors. And if the rumors are true, he's got a panic room somewhere in the basement. If things go south, he'll disappear before you can blink. Thanks, Carter. Frost, wait. If you're really doing this, you should know something. Victor's been talking. Word on the street is he's got something big planned. Something that involves taking down the Iron Wolves once and for all. I figured. No, you don't understand. He's been planning this for years. He's got people in places you wouldn't believe. Law enforcement, government, maybe even your own club. Marcus felt his grip tighten on the phone. My club is loyal. Are they Victor's patient, Frost? He waits. He watches. He finds weaknesses. And when he strikes, he doesn't miss. He's going to miss tonight. Marcus ended the call and checked his watch again. 8 minutes until Shadow was in position. He started moving toward the compound. The north side was less guarded, just as Carter had said. Marcus stayed low, using the blizzard as cover, moving from boulder to tree to snowdrift. His body was numb from the cold, but his mind had never been sharper. Every step brought him closer to Grace Chen. Every step brought him closer to Victor. He reached the generator building and pressed his back against the wall, listening. The hum of machinery covered most sounds, but he could hear voices nearby. 2 guards, maybe 3, talking in Russian. Marcus didn't speak Russian, but he knew laughter when he heard it. These men were relaxed, confident. They had no idea what was coming. He checked his watch. 5 minutes. The voices moved away. Marcus slipped around the corner and found the service entrance, a heavy steel door with an electronic lock. Shadow, he whispered into his radio. I'm at the north entrance. Status? In position. Shadow's voice came back. Ready on your mark. Bear. 2 minutes out. We're ready to make some noise. On my signal, hit them hard. I'm going in. Marcus pulled out the small device that Shadow had given him before they split up a signal jammer that would kill the compound security cameras for exactly 60 seconds. He pressed the button. The electronic lock clicked. Marcus pushed the door open and slipped inside. The corridor was dark and smelled of mold and fear. Marcus moved quickly, his footsteps silent on the concrete floor. He could hear muffled sounds from above, voices, footsteps, the occasional shout. He found the stairs and started climbing. The second floor was chaos. Bear's distraction had begun. Marcus could hear explosions and gunfire from outside, could feel the building shake with each impact. Guards were running everywhere, shouting orders, grabbing weapons. Nobody noticed the shadow moving through the darkness. Marcus reached the third floor and found exactly what Carter had described. A reinforced door locked with a keypad. Behind it, he could hear something that made his blood boil. A woman crying. He didn't bother with the keypad. He pulled out his gun and shot the lock 3 times. The door swung open. Grace Chen was chained to a metal chair in the center of a bare room. Her face was swollen, her lips split, her dark hair matted with blood. But she was alive. She was alive. "Oh God," she breathed when she saw him. "It's you. It's really you." Marcus was already moving, pulling a lockpick from his pocket and working on her chains. "Mrs. Chen, I'm going to get you out of here. Can you walk?" "I think so. My legs are weak, but—" She grabbed his arms suddenly, her grip surprisingly strong. "Wait, you have to know something. They're expecting you." "I know." "No, you don't understand. There's a bomb. Victor planted a bomb somewhere in the building. He said if you showed up, he would bring the whole place down." Marcus's hands froze on the chains. "When did he say this?" "An hour ago, maybe 2. He was laughing about it. He said you would come, and when you did, you would die, along with everyone you tried to save." The chains fell away. Marcus pulled Grace to her feet, supporting her weight as she stumbled. "We need to move. Now." They made it to the corridor before the first guard spotted them. "Intruder, 3rd floor." Marcus pushed Grace behind him and fired 3 shots. The guard went down. 2 more appeared at the end of the hall. "Can you run?" Marcus shouted over the gunfire. "I'll try." They ran. Down the corridor, down the stairs, through a maze of hallways that all looked the same. Marcus fired at anything that moved, his training taking over, while his conscious mind focused on one thing, getting Grace out alive. They burst through a door and found themselves in what looked like a large dining room. A massive wooden table dominated the space, surrounded by overturned chairs. And at the far end of the table, sitting calmly in a leather chair, was Victor Kozlov. Marcus Blackwood. Victor's voice was smooth-cultured, with just a hint of Russian accent. "I've been waiting 12 years for this moment." Marcus pushed Grace behind him and raised his gun. "It's over, Victor. Your men are dead or running. Let us walk out of here, and I'll make it quick." Victor laughed. It was a genuinely amused sound, as if Marcus had told a particularly funny joke. "You think you've won? Look around you, Marcus. Look at what you've accomplished. You've killed some of my men, yes. Freed 1 prisoner. But at what cost?" He held up a small device, a detonator. "There are 40 pounds of C4 planted throughout this building. 1 touch of this button and everyone dies. Your men outside, the woman behind you, and you. The Iron Wolves end tonight." Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. "You'd kill yourself too." "Would I?" Victor's smile widened. "I've lived a full life, Marcus. I've built an empire. I've destroyed my enemies. What more is there? You're bluffing." "Am I?" Victor stood up slowly, the detonator still in his hand. 12 years ago, you killed 3 of my best men. You humiliated me. You took something that belonged to me. I swore that day that I would have my revenge no matter how long it took." He walked toward them, his steps measured and confident. "I've planned this moment down to the last detail. I knew you would come for her. I knew you would bring your brothers. I knew exactly how to draw you in. And now at last I have you. You're insane. Perhaps, but I'm also thorough." Victor stopped 10 feet away, close enough for Marcus to see the madness burning in his eyes. "Here is what happens now. You will put down your weapon. You will watch as I kill the woman slowly, painfully, the way I always intended. And then when I'm finished, I will decide whether to let you live with that memory or grant you the mercy of death. Go to hell. Eventually, yes, but not tonight." Marcus heard movement behind him. Grace screamed. He spun around to find Sheriff Davis standing in the doorway, his gun pressed against Grace's temple. "Sorry, Frost." Davis said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Nothing personal, just business." Marcus's heart stopped. He was surrounded. Victor in front of us, Davis behind him, and Grace caught in the middle with a gun to her head. His men were outside fighting a battle they couldn't see. And somewhere in this building, enough explosives to level a city block were waiting to go off. "Put down the gun, Marcus," Victor said softly. "You've lost." Marcus looked at Grace. Her eyes were filled with tears, but beneath the terror, he saw something else. Trust. She still trusted him. After everything that had happened, after all the pain she had endured, she still believed he would save her. He thought of Lily, that little girl waiting in Missoula, clutching her teddy bear, believing with all her heart that her mother would come home. He thought of his own childhood, the helplessness, the rage, the years spent believing that no one would ever come to save him. Tonight that changed. Marcus lowered his gun. Victor smiled triumphantly. "There. That wasn't so." Marcus moved, not toward Victor, toward Davis. He crossed the space between them in a heartbeat, his body slamming into the sheriff before the man could react. The gun went off, but the bullet went wide, shattering a window. Grace fell to the floor as Marcus and Davis crashed against the wall. "Marcus!" Grace screamed. Davis was stronger than he looked, but Marcus had rage on his side. Rage at the betrayal, rage at the corruption, rage at every person who had ever hurt an innocent child. He slammed Davis's head against the wall once, twice, 3 times. The sheriff went limp. Marcus grabbed Davis's gun and spun toward Victor. But Victor was gone. Only the detonator remained sitting on the table where he had been standing. "Frost!" Shadow's voice exploded through his radio. "We've got a problem. Victor's heading for the basement. He's got some kind of escape tunnel down there." Marcus grabbed Grace and pulled her toward the door. "Shadow, where's the tunnel exit?" "Half a mile east near the old mine shaft." "But Frost, we found the bomb. It's not here, it's there. At the exit. The whole tunnel is wired to blow." Grace looked at him with dawning horror. He's going to seal himself in and destroy everything behind him. "Not if I get there first." Marcus handed Grace off to one of his men, who appeared in the doorway. "Get her out. Oh, don't stop for anything." "Frost, what are you doing?" But Marcus was already running. Marcus hit the basement stairs at full speed, taking them 3 at a time. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but he didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Victor had maybe 30 seconds head start, and if he reached that tunnel exit first, everything they had fought for would go up in flames. "Shadow," he barked into his radio. "Talk to me. Where exactly is that bomb?" "About 200 yards into the tunnel. It's rigged to the support beams. If it goes off, the whole thing collapses." "Can you disarm it?" "We're trying, but Victor's got it on a remote trigger. If he pushes that button, then make sure he doesn't push that button." Marcus reached the bottom of the stairs and found himself in a dark corridor. The air was thick with moisture and the smell of earth. Somewhere ahead, he could hear footsteps. Running footsteps. Victor. He pushed harder, his body operating on pure adrenaline now. The corridor twisted left, then right, then opened into a wider passage carved directly into the mountain rock. Emergency lights flickered overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. And there, maybe 50 feet ahead, Victor Kozlov was running for his life. "Victor," Marcus's voice echoed off the stone walls. "It's over. There's nowhere left to run." Victor didn't stop, didn't even slow down. But Marcus heard him laugh, a high, wild sound that bounced through the tunnel like shattered glass. "You think this is running, Marcus? This is winning. By the time you reach me, this tunnel will be your grave." Marcus saw Victor's hand move toward his pocket. The detonator. "Shadow, he's going for the trigger. We need more time." There was no more time. Marcus did the only thing he could. He stopped running, raised his gun, and fired. The bullet caught Victor in the shoulder. The Russian stumbled, crashed against the tunnel wall, and dropped to his knees. The detonator skittered across the stone floor. They both lunged for it. Victor was closer. His fingers closed around the device, just as Marcus tackled him from behind. They rolled across the ground, grappling for control, each man fighting with the desperation of someone who knew that losing meant death. "You should have stayed away," Victor snarled, his face inches from Marcus's. "You should have let her die." "Never, yes." Marcus slammed his forehead into Victor's nose. Blood sprayed across both their faces. Victor's grip on the detonator loosened for just a moment. It was enough. Marcus tore the device from Victor's hand and hurled it down the tunnel into the darkness beyond. Victor screamed with rage and drove his knee into Marcus's stomach. The air exploded from his lungs. He doubled over, gasping. Victor scrambled to his feet and pulled a knife from his boot, a wicked curved blade that gleamed even in the dim light. "I've imagined this moment so many times," Victor said, circling slowly. "How I would kill you, how I would make you suffer. 12 years of planning, Marcus. 12 years of patience. And now finally I get to watch you bleed." Marcus forced himself upright, his hand pressed against his bruised ribs. 12 years, and this is the best that you could do. A bomb in a tunnel. I expected more from you, Victor. The bomb was never the plan. The bomb was just insurance. Victor's smile was terrible. The real plan was always this. You and me. Face to face. Man to man. Then let's finish it. Victor attacked. The knife slashed through the air, missing Marcus's throat by inches. He twisted away, grabbed Victor's wrist, and drove his elbow into the Russian's wounded shoulder. Victor howled in pain, but didn't drop the blade. Instead, he reversed his grip and stabbed backward, catching Marcus across the forearm. Blood, hot and wet and immediate. Marcus ignored it. He'd been cut before. He'd been shot before. Pain was just information, and right now, the only information that mattered was that Victor was still standing. They traded blows in the flickering light. Fists and knees and elbows. Marcus was bigger, stronger, but Victor was faster, more vicious. The Russian fought like a cornered animal, all teeth and claws and desperate fury. "Your men are dying up there," Victor hissed between strikes. "I can hear them screaming." "How many will you lose tonight, Marcus? How many brothers will die because of one woman? She's worth it. Is she? Victor ducked under a punch and slashed at Marcus's leg. The blade bit deep into his thigh. "Is she worth your life, your club? Everything you've built?" Marcus staggered. The wound was bad. He could feel blood pouring down his leg, pooling in his boot. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. "Yes," he said. "She is." He caught Victor's next strike on his forearm, trapping the knife between their bodies. Then he headbutted him again, feeling the Russian's nose finally break under the impact. Victor stumbled backward, blinded by pain and blood. Marcus didn't give him a chance to recover. He charged forward, wrapped both hands around Victor's throat, and slammed him against the tunnel wall. 12 years, Marcus growled, his fingers tightening. 12 years you've been building this trap, planning your revenge, corrupting cops and politicians, destroying lives. Victor's face was turning purple. His hands clawed at Marcus's grip, but he was weakening. "And for what? Because I stopped you from killing one woman, because I showed you that there are still good people in this world who will fight back. You ruined everything. No, Victor, you ruined yourself. You became so obsessed with the revenge that you forgot what really matters. Family, loyalty, love." Victor's eyes were bulging now. His struggles were becoming feeble. "I could kill you right now," Marcus said quietly. "I could squeeze until your heart stops and your brain goes dark. And part of me wants to. God help me, part of me wants to so badly." His grip loosened slightly. Victor sucked in a desperate breath. "But that's not who I am anymore. That's not who I want to be." "Then you're weak." "No." Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm the man a little girl trusted with her mother's life, and I'm not going to let her down." He released Victor's throat and stepped back. The Russian collapsed to the ground, gasping and coughing. "Shadow," Marcus said into his radio. "I need extraction, tunnel entrance, and bring cuffs. We're taking Victor alive." "Copy that, Frost. On our way." Victor looked up at him with hatred burning in his eyes. "This isn't over. I'll get out. I'll come back. I'll destroy everything you—" "No, you won't." Marcus pulled out his phone and hit a button. "I've been recording this entire conversation. Your confession, your plans, everything. By tomorrow morning, every law enforcement agency in the country will have a copy. You're done, Victor. Not just in Montana, everywhere." For the first time, real fear flickered across Victor's face. You can't. I already did. Footsteps echoed from both ends of the tunnel. Shadow's team appeared from behind Marcus, weapons drawn, and from the other direction more Iron Wolves were closing in, having secured the tunnel exit. Victor looked around at the men surrounding him. The fight went out of his eyes. Take him, Marcus ordered. And someone find that detonator. I want it disarmed before anything else goes wrong. Two of his men hauled Victor to his feet and dragged him toward the exit. The Russian didn't struggle. He just stared at Marcus with dead, empty eyes. This isn't over, he said again, but this time it sounded less like a threat and more like a prayer. Yeah, it is. Marcus watched them take Victor away. Then his leg gave out and he collapsed against the tunnel wall. Frost! Shadow rushed to his side. Jesus, you're bleeding everywhere. We need to get you to Doc. Grace, where's Grace? She's safe. Bear got her out. She's waiting at the rally point. Marcus closed his eyes and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Relief, pure overwhelming relief. And Lily? Raven just checked in. The girl is fine. Scared but fine. Good. That's good. Shadow was wrapping something around Marcus's leg, a tourniquet from the feel of it. The pain was distant, now muffled by shock and exhaustion. You did it, Frost. You actually did it. We did it. All of us. Can you walk? I don't know. Let's find out. Shadow helped him to his feet. Marcus's legs screamed in protest, but it held. Barely. They started the long walk back through the tunnel toward the surface, toward freedom. Marcus leaned heavily on Shadow's shoulder, each step sending fresh waves of agony through his body. Hey, Shadow. Yeah, thanks for everything. Shadow was quiet for a moment. You know, when you first told us about this mission, I thought you'd lost your mind. Going to war with Victor over a woman you hadn't seen in 12 years, it sounded like suicide. It almost was. But you did it anyway. You risked everything for a stranger and her kid. Shadow shook his head. That's not the Frost I've known for 15 years. People change. Yeah, I guess they do. They emerged from the tunnel into chaos. The blizzard was still raging, but now it was mixed with smoke and fire from the destroyed compound. Iron Wolves were everywhere, securing prisoners, treating wounded, calling in the aftermath. And standing in the middle of it all, wrapped in a thermal blanket and supported by Bear's massive arm, was Grace Chen. When she saw Marcus, she broke away from Bear and ran toward him. Shadow stepped aside just in time for Grace to throw her arms around Marcus's neck. Thank you, she sobbed into his shoulder. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Marcus held her as tightly as his wounded body would allow. It's okay. You're safe now. It's over. I thought I was going to die. I thought I'd never see Lily again. You're going to see her. I promise, we're taking you to her right now. Grace pulled back and looked at him with tears streaming down her face. Why did you come for me? You could have died. All of you could have died. Marcus thought about the question, thought about all the reasons he could give, the promise he'd made to Lily, the guilt he'd carried for 12 years, the man he was trying to become. But in the end, only one answer mattered. Because a long time ago, a little girl trusted a stranger to save her mother. And that trust is the most precious thing in the world. Grace stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek. You're a good man, Marcus Blackwood. Whatever they say about you, whatever you've done, you're a good man. Marcus didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded. Come on, let's get you to your daughter. They loaded Grace into one of the trucks. Bear took the wheel with Marcus riding shotgun despite shadows of protest that he should be lying down. The rest of the Iron Wolves would handle the cleanup, the prisoners, the evidence, the bodies. As they drove away from Victor's compound, Marcus looked back at the burning wreckage. 12 years of planning, of scheming, of hatred, all of it reduced to smoke and ash. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he just felt tired. His phone buzzed, a text from Raven. Lily won't stop asking about her mother. How soon can you get here? Marcus typed back, 2 hours, maybe less if Bear drives like he means it. Bear glanced at the phone and pressed harder on the accelerator. I always drive like I mean it. The truck roared through the blizzard, carrying them toward Missoula, toward the shelter, toward a little girl who was waiting for a miracle. They were 45 minutes out when Marcus's phone rang. The caller ID showed Doc. Doc, what's wrong, Membo? Frost, we've got a problem. Doc's voice was tense, urgent. Someone tried to break into the shelter. 3 men. They had guns. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Lily. She's fine. Raven handled it, but one of the men got away and he was talking on a radio. Frost, I think Victor had a backup plan. I think there are more people coming. Marcus looked at Grace. Her face had gone pale. How many? I don't know, but Raven found something on one of the men she took down. A phone with a list of targets. The shelter was just the first. What else is on the list? Doc was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Everything Frost, the clubhouse, the families, everyone connected to the Iron Wolves. Victor wasn't just planning to kill you. He was planning to wipe out your entire world. Marcus felt the truck's speed increase as Bear listened to the conversation. The world outside was a blur of white and darkness. Doc, I need you to get everyone to the clubhouse. Every family, every friend, everyone. We make our stand there. Already on it, but Frost, there's something else you need to know. What? The man who got away, Raven, got a good look at him before he ran. She recognized him. Who was it? Doc's answer hit Marcus like a physical blow. It was Deputy Morrison, Sheriff Davis's right-hand man. Frost Victor didn't just buy the sheriff. He bought the whole damn department. Marcus closed his eyes. The corruption ran deeper than he'd imagined. Deeper than anyone had imagined. How long until reinforcements reached the shelter? 20 minutes, maybe less. And how long until we get there? Bear's voice was grim. 40 minutes, at least. 20 minutes. Grace's daughter had 20 minutes before Victor's backup plan arrived. 20 minutes before armed men stormed a shelter full of women and children. Raven, Marcus said into the phone. Put me through to Raven. There was a moment of static, then his daughter's voice came through. I'm here, Dad. How many guns do you have? 6, including me. Doc's not much use in a firefight, but the sisters are tougher than they look. And how many threats are we looking at? Based on the radio chatter, we intercepted 15. Maybe 20. 6 against 20. Those were impossible odds. Dad? Raven's voice was steady calm. I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no. We're not running. We're not leaving these kids behind. Raven. Lily is here. Grace's daughter, the little girl who walked through a blizzard to find us. She's hiding under a bed right now, clutching that teddy bear you gave back to her, asking me every 5 minutes if her mama is coming. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I made her a promise, Dad. I told her she would see her mother again. And I don't break my promises. Not ever. Neither do I. There was a long pause. Father and daughter separated by miles of frozen highway, connected by something stronger than blood. 20 minutes, Raven said finally. Just get here in 20 minutes and we'll hold the line. We'll be there. I swear to God we'll be there. I know you will. The line went dead. Marcus turned to Bear. How fast can this truck go? Faster than this. Then make it happen. Bear's foot hit the floor. The truck surged forward, engine screaming, tires, fighting for traction on the icy road. In the back seat, Grace was crying silently. Marcus reached back and took her hand. She's going to be okay. Your daughter is going to be okay. How can you know that? Because my daughter is protecting her, and Raven has never let me down. The truck tore through the night like a bullet racing against time, against fate, against the darkness that threatened to swallow everything Marcus loved. 18 minutes. Somewhere behind them, Victor Kozlov was being loaded into a federal transport, his empire in ruins. But his final weapon was still in play. His last act of vengeance was still unfolding. 16 minutes. Marcus checked his gun. 3 rounds left. He'd need to find more when they arrived, if they arrived. 14 minutes. His phone buzzed. A text from Shadow. Compound secure, bodies being processed. Sheriff Davis singing like a bird. What do you need? Marcus typed back. Every man you can spare. Missoula shelter. Now. The response came immediately. On our way. 12 minutes. Bear took a corner too fast. The truck fishtailed on the ice, nearly going into a ditch before he wrestled it back under control. Sorry, boss. Don't be sorry. Just be fast. 10 minutes. Marcus heard something over the wind. Distant. Rhythmic. Gunfire. Bear. I hear it. We're close. 8 minutes. The shelter appeared through the blizzard like a fortress under siege. Muzzle flashes lit up the windows. Marcus could see figures moving in the parking lot, taking cover behind vehicles, exchanging fire with defenders inside. "Pull around back," Marcus ordered. "We go in through the kitchen entrance." Bear didn't question. He just obeyed. The truck slammed to a stop behind the building. Marcus was out before it finished moving his wounded leg, forgotten his entire being, focused on one thing. Get to Lily. Get to Raven. End this. Grace was right behind him. "I'm coming with you." "It's dangerous. She's my daughter." There was no time to argue. Marcus handed her a gun from the truck's emergency kit. "Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say." They burst through the kitchen door and into hell. The shelter's main room was a battlefield. Overturned furniture served as barricades. Bullet holes pockmarked the walls. And in the center of it all, Raven stood with a rifle in her hands, directing the defense like a general commanding troops. "Dad." She spotted him across the chaos. Northwest corner, they're trying to breach. Marcus saw them, 3 men with tactical gear, working on a reinforced door that led to the children's wing. To Lily. "Grace, stay here." He didn't wait to see if she obeyed. He was already moving, crossing the room in a dead sprint, ignoring the bullets that whizzed past his head. The first man never saw him coming. Marcus hit him from behind, driving him into the wall with enough force to crack plaster. The second man turned, raised his weapon, and took a bullet between the eyes from Marcus's last round. The third man got his gun up in time. Marcus felt the impact before he heard the shot. His left shoulder exploded in agony. He staggered, dropped to one knee. The man stood over him, weapon aimed at his head. "End of the line, old man." A shot rang out. The man crumpled. Behind him, holding a smoking rifle, stood a woman Marcus had never seen before. She was maybe 60, gray-haired, wearing a bathrobe and slippers. "Sister Margaret," she said calmly, "retired Army nurse. Pleasure to meet you." Marcus stared at her. "You just saved my life." "That's what we do here. Now get up. There are still children to protect." Marcus forced himself to his feet. His shoulder was screaming, but it was a through-and-through wound. He'd survive. The door to the children's wing was still intact. Behind it, he could hear crying. Small voices, terrified voices, and one voice louder than the rest. "Mr. Frost promised it. He promised he would bring my mama back." Lily, Marcus's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the same moment. "Raven," he shouted. "Status. 3 hostiles down, 6 more retreating. I think we broke them. Make sure I'm going to check on the kids." He pushed through the door and found himself in a corridor lined with small beds. Huddled at the far end, surrounded by nuns who had formed a human shield, were maybe 20 children. And in the front of the group, clutching Mr. Buttons, the teddy bear was Lily Chen. When she saw Marcus, her face transformed. Terror gave way to recognition, then to joy so pure it hurt to look at. "Mr. Frost." She broke free from the group and ran toward him. Marcus dropped to his knees just in time to catch her in his arms. "You came," she sobbed into his chest. "You came, you came, you came." "I promised, didn't I?" "Is my mama safe? Did you save her?" Marcus looked up and saw Grace standing in the doorway. Tears were streaming down her face. Her hands were shaking. "Lily," Marcus said gently, "turn around." Lily turned. For one eternal moment, mother and daughter stared at each other across the bullet-scarred corridor. Neither moved. Neither breathed. Then Grace opened her arms and Lily flew into them. "Mama, mama, mama. Baby, my sweet, brave baby." They held each other like they would never let go. Marcus watched them, his own eyes burning with tears he refused to shed. Raven appeared at his side. Her face was streaked with gunpowder and exhaustion, but she was smiling. "You made it. Did you doubt me?" "Never." She looked at Grace and Lily, still locked in their embrace. "That's what we fight for, isn't it? Moments like this." "Yeah, it is." "Dad," Raven's voice grew serious. "Your shoulder." "It's fine. You're bleeding everywhere." "I said it's fine." Raven shook her head but didn't argue. She knew him too well. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. The remaining attackers had fled into the blizzard, leaving their dead behind. The battle was over. Marcus looked around at the shelter, the damaged walls, the shattered windows, the frightened children slowly emerging from their hiding places. This place had been built to protect the vulnerable. Tonight it had been tested by fire, and it had held. "We need to get everyone out of here," he said. Victor might have more people coming. Shadow just radioed in. He's 5 minutes out with 20 men. We'll have this place locked down tight before anyone else tries anything. Good. And the children? We'll move them to the clubhouse. It's the safest place in the state right now. Marcus nodded. It was a good plan, but there was something else that needed to happen first. He walked over to where Grace and Lily were still holding each other. Both of them looked up at his approach. Mr. Frost, Lily said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. Thank you for keeping your promise. You're welcome, Lily, but I didn't do it alone. A lot of people helped tonight, and one person helped most of all. Who? Marcus smiled and touched her cheek. You. You were the bravest person I've ever met, walking through that blizzard, finding our clubhouse, trusting us to help you. Without your courage, none of this would have been possible. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Really? You saved your mama, Lily. Not me. You. Fresh tears spilled down Lily's face, but this time they were tears of pride. Grace looked at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, yes, but something else too, something deeper. I don't know how to thank you, she said quietly. I don't know how to repay what you've done. You don't owe me anything, just take care of your daughter. That's all the thanks I need. It's not enough, it will never be enough. Marcus was about to respond when a commotion erupted at the shelter entrance. He spun around, hand going to his empty holster. But it wasn't another attack. It was Bear pushing through the crowd with something in his hand, a phone at screen glowing in the dim light. Frost, you need to see this. Marcus took the phone and looked at the screen. It was a news alert timestamped just minutes ago. FBI raids Montana Sheriff's Department. Multiple arrests in corruption scandal. Trafficking ring exposed. The story was already spreading. Victor's network was collapsing in real-time dominoes, falling across 3 states. Arrests, seizures, rescues. Dozens of women freed from trafficking operations. Hundreds of documents exposing corruption at every level of local government. It's happening, Bear said, his voice filled with wonder. Everything Victor built is coming down. Marcus stared at the screen. He thought of the recording on his phone. The confession he'd captured in the tunnel. He'd sent copies to every federal agency he could think of, along with every journalist he trusted. Tonight, he'd lit a match. Now the whole rotten system was burning. It's not over, Marcus said quietly. This is just the beginning. Victor was one man. There are others like him. There always will be. But tonight we won. Tonight we saved one family and exposed one monster. He looked at Grace and Lily, still wrapped in each other's arms. And that's enough. For now, that's enough. Raven put her hand on his uninjured shoulder. Come on, Dad. Let's get you patched up before you bleed to death and ruin this happy ending. Marcus laughed, a real laugh, the first one he'd felt in years. Yeah, okay, let's do that. As they walked toward the medical station, Lily's voice rang out behind them. Mr. Frost. He turned back. The little girl was looking at him with those enormous dark eyes, the same eyes that had stared up at him from his doorstep just hours ago, filled with terror and hope in equal measure. Will you come see us again when this is all over? Marcus felt something warm bloom in his chest, something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Yeah, Lily, I'll come see you again, I promise. And this time when he made the promise, he knew exactly what it meant. 3 days passed before Marcus could stand without help. The bullet wound in his shoulder had done more damage than Doc initially thought. The round had nicked an artery, and by the time they got Marcus to the hospital, he'd lost nearly 2 pints of blood. The doctor said he was lucky to be alive. Marcus didn't feel lucky. He felt hollow. 2 of his brothers hadn't made it home. Tommy Bear Kowalski had taken 3 rounds in the chest during the assault on Victor's compound. He'd kept fighting for another 10 minutes before his body finally gave out. Jake Torres, the 23-year-old kid who had never seen real combat, had died trying to drag Bear to safety. Their bodies lay in the clubhouse chapel now waiting for burial, and Marcus couldn't bring himself to look at them. You need to eat something, Raven's voice cut through his thoughts. She was standing in the doorway of his hospital room, holding a tray of food that smelled like it had been sitting out for hours. I'm not hungry. That wasn't a suggestion. She walked in and set the tray on his lap. Doc says you need calories to heal, so eat. Raven, eat, Dad. or I'll force feed you like I did when you had the flu 3 years ago. Remember how that went? Marcus almost smiled. Almost. He picked up a fork and pushed the food around his plate, not really seeing it. His mind was somewhere else. In the tunnel with Victor, on the mountain with his dying brothers, in the shelter watching Lily run into her mother's arms. It wasn't your fault. He looked up. Raven had settled into the chair beside his bed, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. What? Bear and Jake, it wasn't your fault. I led them into that ambush. I made the call to attack. You made the call to save an innocent woman and her daughter. Bear and Jake knew the risks. They chose to follow you anyway. They trusted me. Yes, and that trust was earned. Raven leaned forward, her voice softening. Dad, I've known you my whole life, well, the life that mattered anyway. You've never once sent men into danger without being willing to face that danger yourself. Bear knew that. Jake knew that. Every man in this club knows that. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Jake was 23. He had his whole life ahead of him. And he chose to spend the last minutes of that life protecting someone he loved, protecting Bear, protecting all of us. Raven reached out and took his hand. That's not a tragedy, Dad. That's a legacy. The door opened before Marcus could respond. Grace Chen stood in the threshold, her daughter hiding behind her legs. I'm sorry, Grace said quickly. We can come back. No. Marcus straightened up, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. Please, come in. Grace hesitated, then stepped into the room. Lily followed her small hand, clutching her mother's dress. In her other arm, she held Mr. Buttons, the teddy bear that had traveled through hell and back. We wanted to see you before we left, Grace said. To thank you. Properly. Left, where are you going? The FBI is putting us in witness protection. New identities, new city, new life. Grace's voice wavered slightly. They say it's the only way to keep us safe. Victor's organization is collapsing, but there are still people who might want revenge. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He'd known this was coming. Witness protection was still a standard procedure in cases like this, but knowing it and hearing it were two different things. When do you leave? Tonight, they're moving us to a secure location first, then. Grace trailed off, tears glistening in her eyes. Then we disappear. Forever. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Lily stepped forward, her small face serious beyond her years. Mr. Frost, are you sad? Marcus looked at her, this tiny, brave, impossible child who had walked through a blizzard to save her mother. This child who had trusted strangers with her life and been rewarded with a miracle. Yeah, little one, I'm sad. Because of the men who died. Yes, and because I'm going to miss you. Lily's lower lip trembled. I'm going to miss you too. You and Raven and Bear and... She stopped, her eyes widening. Is Bear okay? He was so nice to me. He gave me hot chocolate. Marcus couldn't speak. The lump in his throat was too large. Raven stepped in, kneeling beside Lily with gentle grace. Bear had to go away, sweetheart, to a place where there's no more pain. You mean heaven? Yeah, heaven. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the terrible clarity of childhood. Then she walked to Marcus's bedside and climbed up onto the mattress, careful not to jostle his wounded shoulder. Mama says heroes cry too, she said softly. She says it means they have big hearts. Marcus felt something break inside him. Not the sharp, violent break of battle, but something softer. Something that had been frozen for 40 years, slowly beginning to thaw. Your mama's very smart. I know. Lily snuggled against his side, her small body warm and trusting. Mr. Frost, will you remember me even when I'm gone and have a new name? Always, Lily. I'll remember you always. Promise, promise. Grace was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter comfort the broken man who had saved their lives. She walked to the bed and took Marcus's hand. 12 years ago, you saved me. I was 20 years old, alone, terrified. I'd made bad choices, trusted bad people, and I was about to pay for it with my life. Then you appeared out of nowhere like an angel from heaven, and everything changed. I'm no angel, Grace. You are to me. You are to Lily. Grace squeezed his hand. I kept your club's symbol all these years because I wanted to remember that good people exist. That even in the darkest places, there are still those who will fight for strangers. I told Lily about you every night as a bedtime story. The motorcycle angel who saved her mama. Marcus couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They spilled down his weathered cheeks, each one carrying 40 years of pain and loneliness and self-hatred. I don't deserve, yes you do. Grace's voice was fierce. You deserve every good thing that comes your way, Marcus Blackwood. You deserve happiness. You deserve family. You deserve to forgive yourself for whatever sins you think you've committed. She leaned down and kissed his forehead, her lips soft and warm. Thank you. Thank you for being the man I always believed you were. They stayed like that for a long moment, the wounded outlaw, the grateful mother, and the brave little girl who had brought them together. It wasn't a goodbye, not really. It was something more profound, a recognition of bonds that transcended names and places and time. Finally, Grace pulled back. We have to go. The agents are waiting. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. Lily hugged him one last time, her small arms squeezing with surprising strength. Remember your promise, Mr. Frost. You said you'd come see me again. I remember. I'll be waiting, even if I have a new name. Even if I'm far away, I'll be waiting for you. She climbed off the bed and took her mother's hand. At the doorway, she turned back one last time. Bye, Mr. Frost. Bye, Raven. Tell the other motorcycle men thank you for me. I will, sweetheart. I will. And then they were gone. Marcus stared at the empty doorway for a long time. The room felt colder somehow, emptier. Dad? Raven's voice was gentle. You okay? No. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. But I will be. The funeral was held 3 days later on a cold January morning when the sky was steel gray and the wind cut like a knife. The entire Iron Wolves Club turned out all 47 members, plus wives, children, and friends who had become family over the years. They stood in rows before 2 open graves, their leather jackets bearing the snarling wolf skull that had become a symbol of brotherhood and sacrifice. Marcus stood at the front, supported by Shadow on one side and Raven on the other. His wounds were still healing, but nothing could have kept him from this moment. Tommy Kowalski was my brother, Marcus said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. Not by blood, but by choice. He rode with me for 22 years. He saved my life more times than I can count. He was the first person I called when I needed help and the last person I wanted to disappoint. He paused, fighting to control his emotions. Bear was afraid of nothing. He would fight anyone, anytime, anywhere. But what most people didn't know was that he was also the gentlest soul I've ever met. He loved animals. He cried at sad movies. He once drove 200 miles to rescue a stray dog he'd seen on the side of the road. A ripple of sad laughter moved through the crowd. Everyone who knew Bear had a story like that. 3 days ago, Bear died for protecting a woman and child he'd never met. He didn't hesitate. He didn't question. He just did what he'd always done. He put himself between the innocent and the evil, and he paid the ultimate price. Marcus turned to the second grave. Jake Torres was young, too young. He'd been with us less than a year, still learning the ropes, still figuring out who he wanted to be. But on that mountain, he showed me who he already was. A hero, a brother, a man who would give everything for the people he loved. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 patches, the Iron Wolves insignia worn smooth by years of wear. These belonged to Bear and Jake. They earned them with blood and loyalty and sacrifice. And now they take them to wherever warriors go when their battles are done. Marcus placed 1 patch in each grave, his hands trembling. Rest well, brothers. The ride is over, but we'll see you again on the other side. One by one, the other Iron Wolves stepped forward to pay their respects. Each man dropped something into the grave's coins, tokens, photographs, small mementos of lives shared and memories made. When it was done, they stood in silence as the graves were filled. Raven took Marcus's hand. That was beautiful, Dad. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. They would have been proud. Bear especially. He always said you were terrible at expressing emotions. Marcus laughed despite himself. He wasn't wrong. The wake was held at the clubhouse as tradition demanded. Whiskey flowed freely and stories of Bear and Jake filled the air. laughter mixed with tears as the club celebrated the lives of their fallen brothers. Marcus sat apart from the others, nursing a glass of bourbon he hadn't touched. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the events of Christmas Eve over and over, searching for the moment where he could have done something different. "Mind if I sit?" He looked up to find a woman he didn't recognize. She was in her 50s, well-dressed, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through him. "Do I know you?" "No, but I know you, Tito." She sat down across from him without waiting for permission. "My name is Sarah Chen, FBI. I'm the agent in charge of the Kozlov investigation." Marcus tensed. "If you're here to arrest me, I'm here to thank you." She pulled out a folder and laid it on the table. "Your recording of Victor's confession has been invaluable. Combined with Sheriff Davis's testimony, we've been able to dismantle an organization that has been operating for over 2 decades. 47 arrests so far, with more coming. 12 trafficking operations shut down. Over 100 women rescued." Marcus stared at the folder. That's good. It's better than good. It's unprecedented." Agent Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm not going to pretend I approve of your methods. You broke about a dozen laws on Christmas Eve. By rights, you should be in federal custody right now." "So why aren't I?" "Because sometimes the law isn't enough. Sometimes it takes people who are willing to step outside the lines to do what needs to be done." She pushed the folder toward him. "This is a formal letter of immunity signed by the Attorney General. You and your men are clear. No charges, no investigation, no consequences." Marcus opened the folder and stared at the document inside. The words blurred together, but the meaning was clear. They were free. "There's a catch," Agent Chen continued. "There's always a catch." "What is it?" "We want to work with you, officially. The FBI has been trying to develop community-based intervention programs for years, but we've never been able to crack the trust barrier. People in these neighborhoods don't trust law enforcement, but they trust you. You want me to become a Fed? I want you to become a bridge between the people who need help and the people who can provide it. We provide resources, legal protection, funding. You provide access, credibility, and the kind of on-the-ground response that our agents can't match." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the offer. "I need to think about it." "Take all the time you need." Agent Chen stood up. "But while you're thinking, consider this. What happened on Christmas Eve doesn't have to be a one-time thing. There are other Lilies out there, other Graces, other families being torn apart by predators like Victor. You saved 2 of them. How many more could you save if you had real support?" She left the folder on the table and walked away. Marcus stared at it for a long time. Then he picked up his bourbon and finally took a drink. A week later, Marcus found himself standing in front of the clubhouse watching the snow fall. His shoulder had healed enough that he could move without help, though Doc said he'd probably have a permanent scar. One more scar to add to the collection. "You've been standing there for an hour." Raven appeared beside him, 2 steaming mugs in her hands. She offered one to Marcus. "Coffee?" "Thanks." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the snow accumulate on the bikes parked in the lot. "I read the FBI's proposal," Raven said finally. "It's a good deal. It's a trap. They want to legitimize us so they can control us. Maybe, or maybe they genuinely want to help." Raven sipped her coffee. "Not everyone with a badge is corrupt, Dad." Agent Chen seemed sincere. She seemed like she knew exactly what buttons to push. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." Marcus almost smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." Raven bumped his shoulder gently. "What are you really afraid of?" The question cut deeper than he expected. Marcus took a long drink of coffee, buying time to formulate an answer. "I'm afraid of becoming something I'm not. The Iron Wolves have always been outlaws. It's who we are. If we start working with the feds, how long before we lose that identity? How long before we become just another tool of the system?" "Or," I think Raven countered, "how long before we become something better?" Marcus looked at her sharply. "Dad, I love this club. I love what it stands for. But let's be honest, we've been drifting for years. The drug runs dried up. The protection rackets fell apart. Most of our income comes from legitimate businesses now. The outlaw thing, it's more nostalgia than reality." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Raven turned to face him. When's the last time we did something that actually mattered? Something that made a real difference in people's lives before Christmas Eve, I mean. Marcus couldn't answer. Because she was right. Lily changed something, Raven continued. Not just for you, for all of us. When she showed up at our door, she reminded us why we became Iron Wolves in the first place. To protect people who can't protect themselves. To stand up against bullies and predators and anyone who thinks they can prey on the weak. We've always done that. In small ways, yes, but what if we could do it in a big way? What if we could take what we did for Lily and Grace and turn it into something permanent? Something that could help hundreds of families, thousands even. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the world in white. Bear would have loved this idea, he said finally. Bear would have been the first one to sign up. Raven smiled sadly. He always said the club needed a purpose beyond just surviving. Maybe this is it. And Jake? Jake died believing in something. That's more than most people can say. Marcus finished his coffee and set the mug on the railing. His mind was made up. Call Agent Chen. Tell her we're interested. Raven's face lit up. Really? On our terms. We don't become employees of the FBI. We become partners. Equal say in operations, full autonomy in how we handle situations. If they want our help, they play by our rules. She won't like that. She doesn't have to like it. She just has to accept it. Marcus turned to go back inside. And Raven started thinking about what we need. Resources, training facilities. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Yes, sir. Raven was grinning now. Hey, Dad. He paused at the door. I'm proud of you, for what that's worth. It's worth everything. He went inside, leaving his daughter alone with the falling snow and the promise of something new. 2 months later, the transformation was underway. The Iron Wolves clubhouse had been renovated, half of it converted into a legitimate crisis intervention center. Professional counselors worked alongside club members. Social workers coordinated with federal agents. A hotline had been established, staffed around the clock by trained volunteers. They called it Lily's Haven, in honor of the little girl who had started it all. Marcus stood in the main room watching the organized chaos unfold around him. Women and children came and went, some seeking shelter, others seeking information, all of them seeking hope. Mr. Blackwood. He turned to find a young woman standing behind him. She couldn't have been more than 20, with frightened eyes and fresh bruises on her arms. Yes. My name is Maria. Someone told me you help people in trouble. Marcus felt his heart clench. Another Maria, another victim, another soul in need of salvation. We do our best. What's your situation? My boyfriend. He's involved with some bad people. Drug dealers, I think. He's been getting more violent lately. Last night She trailed off, unable to finish. You're safe here, Marcus said gently. No one's going to hurt you. We have counselors who can help you figure out your next steps. And if your boyfriend or his friends come looking for trouble, well, he glanced around at the leather-clad bikers scattered throughout the room. They'll find more trouble than they can handle. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. It was the same question Grace had asked, the same question everyone asked, and Marcus finally knew the answer. Because a long time ago, someone helped me when I couldn't help myself, and I made a promise to pay that forward one person at a time. He put a hand on her shoulder. Come on, let me introduce you to Raven. She'll take care of you. He led Maria to his daughter, who was already rising from her desk with a welcoming smile. Another one, Raven asked quietly. Another one. Good, we've got room. As Raven guided Maria toward the counseling offices, Marcus felt his phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. He opened it and felt his breath catch. It was a photo of a little girl in a yellow dress standing in front of a school building. She was smiling, her dark hair pulled back in pigtails, a backpack slung over her shoulders. Below the photo, 3 words, thank you, always L. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Then he saved it to his phone right next to the last photo he had of Bear and Jake. Some promises were worth keeping forever. That night, after the center had closed and the staff had gone home, Marcus sat alone in his office. On his desk was a small wooden horse, hand-carved and worn smooth by countless childhood hands. He'd found it in a box of his belongings after the funeral, a relic from the brief period when he'd believed in things like hope and safety. Now he was starting to believe again. There was a knock at his door. "Come in." Raven entered, her face unreadable. "Dad, there's someone here to see you." "At this hour?" "She says it's important. She says you'll want to hear what she has to say." Marcus frowned. "Who is it?" Raven stepped aside, revealing a woman in her 60s, gray-haired and dignified, wearing a simple black dress. "Hello, Marcus," the woman said. "It's been a long time." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Standing before him was a ghost from his past, a woman he hadn't seen in 35 years, a woman he'd convinced himself was dead. "Mom," the word hung in the air like a prayer and a curse combined. Mom, Marcus hadn't spoken that word in 35 years. He'd trained himself to forget it, to bury it, along with every other memory of the childhood that had been stolen from him. And now here she stood, flesh and blood, and impossible. "You're dead," he whispered. "They told me you were dead." Eleanor Blackwood, because that's who she was, his mother, the woman who had held him as a baby, who had sung him to sleep, who had taken beatings, so he wouldn't have to step into the office with the careful grace of someone who had learned to move through the world without making waves. "They told you what they needed to tell you. What would make you stop looking?" "I didn't stop looking." Marcus's voice cracked. "I spent 10 years trying to find you. I hired detectives. I broke into sealed records. I know everything you did." Eleanor's eyes glistened with tears. "And every single day I wanted to reach out, to tell you the truth, but I couldn't. Not until now." Raven was still standing in the doorway, her face pale with shock. "Dad, what's going on? Who is this woman?" Marcus couldn't answer. His legs gave out and he collapsed into his chair, staring at the ghost before him. "My name is Eleanor," the woman said gently, turning to Raven. "I'm Marcus's mother and your grandmother." Raven's mouth fell open. "That's impossible. Dad said his mother died when he was 7. That's what he believed. That's what he was supposed to believe." Eleanor turned back to Marcus, her expression heavy with decades of guilt. "May I sit down? This is a long story and I'm not as young as I used to be." Marcus nodded numbly. Eleanor lowered herself into the chair across from his desk, the same chair that Agent Chen had occupied just weeks ago. "After that night, the night your father almost killed me, I was taken to a hospital 3 counties away. The injuries were severe. I was in a coma for 2 weeks." She paused, her hands trembling in her lap. "When I woke up, there was a man in my room, a federal agent. He told me that your father had connections to organized crime. People who would kill me the moment I surfaced. People who would kill you to hurt me. Dad was a drunk and a wife beater. He wasn't connected to anything. He wasn't, but his brother was. Your Uncle Raymond, the one you never met, he was a lieutenant in the Kozlov organization." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Kozlov, Victor Kozlov. Victor's father, actually, Andrei Kozlov. He ran the operation back then. Your uncle owed him money, and when he couldn't pay, Andrei made an example of our family. Eleanor's voice hardened. "Your father's drinking his violence. It wasn't just who he was. He was being pressured, threatened. They told him if he didn't keep us in line, if he didn't make sure we never talked to anyone about what we knew, they would kill all of us. What did you know? I saw a murder. 3 weeks before that final night, I was coming home from the grocery store, and I saw your uncle and 2 other men kill someone in the alley behind our building. They didn't know I was there, but your father found out, and he told Raymond, and suddenly our lives weren't our own anymore." Marcus's mind was reeling. The connections were forming, terrible and inevitable. His mother had witnessed a Kozlov murder. Grace Chen had witnessed a Kozlov murder. History repeating itself across generations. "The federal agent gave me a choice," Eleanor continued. "I could testify against the organization and enter witness protection, but I'd have to leave you behind. If I took you with me, they'd never stop looking. A woman alone could disappear. A woman with a child would always be traceable. So you left me." The words came out flat, emotionless. "You chose to save yourself." "I chose to save you." Eleanor's voice broke. "Don't you understand? If I had taken you with me, they would have found us. They would have killed us both. The only way to keep you safe was to make everyone believe I was dead, including you." I was 7 years old. I spent my entire childhood thinking my mother was gone. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Yes. Tears were streaming down Eleanor's face now. I know exactly what it did because I watched. From a distance, always from a distance, but I watched. I saw you go through the foster homes. I saw you struggle. I saw you build this club, create a family from nothing. I saw you become the man you are today. You watched, and you never once reached out. I couldn't. They were always looking. Even after Andre died, his son Victor took over the search. He knew there was a witness out there somewhere. He spent decades trying to find me. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes burning with intensity. Why do you think he targeted Grace Chen? Why do you think he set that elaborate trap? Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. He was looking for you. He was looking for the original witness. When Grace saw that murder, Victor thought he'd finally found me. A woman who witnessed a Kozlov killing, who had connections to the Iron Wolves. It fit the profile he had been hunting for 35 years. Grace doesn't have connections to the Iron Wolves. I saved her once, 12 years ago. That's all. And that one act of kindness created a connection. A thread that Victor could pull. Eleanor's voice dropped. When he realized Grace wasn't me, he was furious. But then he saw an opportunity. He knew you would come for her. He knew he could use her as bait to draw you out. And once he had you, he planned to make you talk. To force you to tell him everything you knew about your mother's death, her real death, the one he believed had happened. He thought I knew where you were. He thought you might have memories, clues, anything that could lead him to the truth. Eleanor wiped her eyes. That's why I'm here now, Marcus. Victor is finished. His organization is destroyed. For the first time in 35 years, I can come out of hiding. I can finally tell you the truth. Marcus sat in silence, processing everything he'd heard. 35 years of grief, of anger, of abandonment, all of it built on a lie. A lie designed to protect him. Why now? He asked finally. Why wait until after Victor was captured? You could have come forward months ago, years ago. Because I needed to be sure it was safe. And because, Eleanor hesitated, because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of you, of what you might say, what you might do. She met his eyes and he saw the same fear that had lived in Lily's eyes on Christmas Eve. I abandoned my son. I let you grow up alone, believing you had no one. What kind of mother does that? What kind of person? The kind who wanted to keep her child alive. Eleanor's breath caught. Marcus, I'm not saying I understand. I'm not saying I forgive you. Not yet. Marcus stood up slowly, his body aching with more than just physical wounds. But I'm starting to. Because I know what it's like to make impossible choices. I know what it's like to hurt the people you love in order to protect them. He walked around the desk and stood before his mother. She looked so small, so fragile. The fierce woman who had shielded him from his father's fists was gone, replaced by someone worn down by decades of hiding and regret. I thought about you every day, Eleanor whispered. Every single day. I kept newspaper clippings about the Iron Wolves. I celebrated your victories and mourned your losses. When I heard about what happened on Christmas Eve, how you saved that woman and her daughter, I knew it was time. Time for what? Time to stop hiding. Time to face whatever judgment you chose to give me. Eleanor reached up and touched his face, her fingers trembling. You became a good man, Marcus. Despite everything that happened to you, despite every reason you had to become bitter and cruel, you chose to be good. I can't take credit for that, but I can tell you how proud I am. Marcus felt the walls he'd built around his heart begin to crumble. 40 years of armor of protection, of never letting anyone too close, all of it dissolving under his mother's touch. Mom. The word felt strange on his tongue, but it also right. I need time. I need to process all of this. I understand. I'll wait as long as you need. But I don't want you to leave. Not again. He took her hands in his. Stay. Here in Montana. Let me get to know you again. Eleanor's face crumpled with emotion. Really? Really? I've spent my whole life building a family from broken pieces. One more piece won't hurt. She threw her arms around him, and Marcus held his mother for the first time in 35 years. He was crying now, great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. So was she, and somewhere in the doorway Raven was crying too. "I'm sorry," Eleanor whispered against his chest. "I'm so sorry for everything." "I know, Mom. I know." They held each other for a long time, two damaged souls finally finding their way back together. 3 months later, Lily's Haven had become something Marcus never could have imagined. The Crisis Center had expanded to include a second building funded by a combination of federal grants and private donations. Professional staff worked alongside Iron Wolves volunteers, creating a unique hybrid that was proving more effective than anyone had predicted. Agent Chen had kept her word. The FBI provided resources without interference, allowing Marcus and his team to operate with full autonomy. In return, the Iron Wolves delivered results that no government program could match. 47 families served in the first quarter alone. 16 women rescued from trafficking situations. 8 children reunited with safe relatives. And countless others who simply needed a place to feel protected while they rebuilt their lives. Marcus stood at the window of his office watching a group of children play in the courtyard below. Among them was a boy named Michael, the same Michael who had appeared at their door months ago looking for his sister. He was laughing now, his face bright with joy, his trauma slowly healing under Raven's care. "You're brooding again." He turned to find his mother standing in the doorway, a cup of coffee in each hand. "I'm not brooding. I'm observing." "Same thing with you." Eleanor walked in and handed him a cup. "What's on your mind?" "I was thinking about Bear and Jake, how they would have loved this. They would have been proud." "Yeah." Marcus sipped his coffee. "I still miss them. Every day. That never stops. The missing." Eleanor stood beside him at the window. "But it gets easier to carry, especially when you have purpose." Purpose. It was a word Marcus had never associated with himself. Survival, yes. Loyalty, absolutely. But purpose had always seemed like something other people had, people with clean consciences and unburdened pasts. Now watching the children play, he understood. "Dad," Raven burst into the office, her face flushed with excitement. "You need to come to the main hall, right now." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Just come." Marcus and Eleanor exchanged glances, then followed Raven through the building. The main hall was crowded with people, staff, volunteers, Iron Wolves, members and residents all gathered together. And standing at the center of the crowd holding a teddy bear that Marcus would recognize anywhere was a 9-year-old girl with dark hair and enormous brown eyes. "Mr. Frost." Lily broke free from the crowd and ran toward him. Marcus dropped to his knees just in time to catch her in his arms. "Lily, what are you doing here? How?" "We got permission." Lily was bouncing with excitement. "Special permission. Mama said the bad people are all gone now, so we can visit. We can come back." Marcus looked up and saw Grace standing at the edge of the crowd, tears streaming down her face. She looked different, healthier, happier, her eyes no longer haunted by fear. "The FBI closed the case last week," Grace said, her voice thick with emotion. "Victor's entire network has been dismantled. There's no one left to hurt us, no one left to run from." "So you're safe, really safe." "We're safe." Grace walked forward and took his hand. "Thanks to you, thanks to all of you." The room erupted in applause. Iron Wolves clapped their brothers on the backs. Staff members hugged each other. Children who had once been afraid danced with joy. In the midst of it all, Marcus held Lily and felt something he'd never expected to feel again. Complete. "I missed you, Mr. Frost," Lily whispered in his ear. "I missed you so much. I missed you too, little one. More than you could ever know. I kept my promise. I waited for you. Even with my new name, even in my new city, I waited. And I kept mine. I remembered you. Every single day." Lily pulled back and looked at him with those wise, ancient eyes. "Mama says we can stay in Montana if we want. She says there's nothing to be afraid of anymore." Marcus looked at Grace. "Is that true? If you'll have us." Grace's voice was barely above a whisper. "I know it's a lot to ask, but Lily talks about this place constantly. About you, about Raven, about the motorcycle angels who saved us. She wants to be part of what you're building here." "She already is. You both are." Well, Raven appeared at his side, her arm around a gray-haired woman who was watching the reunion with tears in her eyes. "Lily, Grace, there's someone I want you to meet. This is Eleanor. She's Marcus's mother, and mine now." Eleanor stepped forward, her hands clasped nervously. I've heard so much about you both, about how brave you were, how strong. It's an honor to finally meet you. Lily studied the older woman with the intensity of a child who had learned to read people the hard way. Then she smiled that brilliant, trusting smile that had melted Marcus's heart on Christmas Eve. You're Mr. Frost's mama. But he said his mama was gone. She was, for a long time. Marcus put his hand on Eleanor's shoulder. But she came back. People can do that sometimes. They can come back from very far away if they have something worth coming back for. Like us, Lily asked. Me and Mama came back too. Exactly like you. Lily considered this for a moment. Then she reached out and took Eleanor's hand with one of hers and Marcus's hand with the other. Now we're all together like a family. The simple words hit Marcus like a thunderbolt. Family. That's what they had become, this impossible collection of broken people. Not bound by blood, but by something stronger. By choice, by love. By the shared experience of surviving darkness and finding light. Yeah, Lily, like a family. That evening, a celebration unfolded at the clubhouse unlike anything the Iron Wolves had ever seen. 3 generations gathered around long tables, bikers and counselors, children and grandparents, survivors and rescuers. Food was passed, stories were shared, and laughter echoed off walls that had witnessed so much pain. Marcus sat at the head of the main table, Grace on one side and his mother on the other. Lily had claimed the seat beside Raven, and the two of them were deep in conversation about some adventure they were planning. This is incredible, Grace said softly, looking around the room. I never imagined anything like this. Neither did I. Marcus watched his club, his family celebrating together. A year ago, if you'd told me this would happen, I would have called you crazy. What changed? Lily. Marcus smiled. One little girl knocking on a door in the middle of a blizzard. She changed everything. She has that effect on people. She has that effect on monsters. Marcus turned to Grace. I was a monster, you know. Before her, I had done terrible things, hurt people, destroyed lives. I told myself it was necessary, that the world was cruel, and I had to be crueler to survive. And now I know that was a lie I told myself because the truth was too scary. What truth? Marcus was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. That being good is a choice. Every day, every moment, we choose who we want to be. I spent 40 years choosing to be hard because I was afraid of being hurt. But hardness doesn't protect you, it just makes you brittle. Easy to break. He looked at Lily, who was now showing Raven something on her phone, her face alight with happiness. That little girl broke me. She walked through my door, and she broke every wall I'd ever built. And I'm grateful, because what she built in their place is so much better. Grace reached out and took his hand. You're not a monster, Marcus. You never were. You were just someone who needed to be reminded of who he really is. And who am I? A hero, a father, a protector. Grace squeezed his hand, the motorcycle angel. Marcus laughed, but his eyes were wet. I'm nobody's angel. You're mine, you're Lily's. You're everyone in this room. Grace gestured at the crowded hall. Look at what you've created. Look at the lives you've touched. That's not the work of a monster. That's the work of a man with the biggest heart I've ever seen. Before Marcus could respond, the room fell silent. Shadow had stood up at the far end of the hall, raising his glass. Brothers and sisters, Shadow said, his voice carrying easily. A year ago, we were just a motorcycle club, aging outlaws looking for purpose. Then a little girl knocked on our door and everything changed. He turned to look at Marcus. Our president made a decision that night, a decision that could have gotten us all killed. He chose to fight for a stranger. He chose to put his life on the line for someone he'd never met. And in doing so, he showed us what the Iron Wolves could become. Shadow raised his glass higher. Tonight we celebrate more than just a reunion. We celebrate a transformation. From outlaws to guardians, from criminals to protectors, from a club to a family. The room erupted in cheers, glasses clinked. The Iron Wolves roared their approval. To Frost, Shadow shouted. To our president. To the man who taught us that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. To Frost. Marcus stood up, his heart so full he thought it might burst. He looked around at the faces before him. His brothers, his daughter, his mother, his friends, the woman he might learn to love, and the little girl who had started it all. Thank you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. All of you, but I can't take credit for what we've built here. That belongs to everyone in this room, and especially to one person. He walked to where Lily sat and knelt beside her. A year ago, you knocked on our door. You were 6 years old, freezing, terrified, and braver than any soldier I've ever known. You looked at a room full of scary men and asked them to save your mama. Lily's eyes were shining with tears. I've been asked a lot of things in my life, but that question, your question, was the first one that really mattered, because it wasn't about me. It wasn't about territory or money or power. It was about love. Pure, simple, unconditional love. He took her small hand in his massive one. You saved me, Lily Chen. You saved all of us. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the trust you placed in me that night. Lily threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Mr. Frost. I love you too, little one, more than anything in this world. The room exploded in applause again, but Marcus barely heard it. All he could feel was the small body pressed against his chest, the tiny heart beating in rhythm with his own. This was what he had been searching for his entire life. Not power, not revenge, not survival, family. Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and the guests had departed, Marcus found himself alone on the clubhouse porch. The snow had stopped falling and the sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Stars glittered overhead like scattered diamonds. Room for one more. He turned to find Eleanor beside him, wrapped in a heavy coat. Always. They stood in companionable silence, watching the night sky. Your father would have hated all of this, you know, Eleanor said eventually. The charity work, the children, the healing. Good. He was a bastard. He was, but he wasn't always. Eleanor's voice grew distant. When I first met him, he was kind, gentle. The violence came later after his brother got him involved with the Kozlovs. It changed him, twisted him into something he never wanted to be. You're defending him. No, I'm explaining him. There's a difference. Eleanor turned to face Marcus. I spent 35 years thinking about the past, about what could have been different, about the choices we all made and the prices we paid. And I've learned that blame is poison. It eats you from the inside out. The only antidote is forgiveness. Marcus considered this. I don't know if I can forgive him. You don't have to, not yet, but maybe someday you can forgive yourself. For what? For surviving, for moving on, for becoming happy despite everything that tried to break you. Eleanor took his hand. I see the guilt you carry, Marcus, the weight of all the things you think you should have done differently. But you need to let it go. You need to accept that you did the best you could with what you had. What if my best wasn't good enough? Then you try again tomorrow. Eleanor squeezed his hand. That's all any of us can do. Wake up, try again. Be a little better than we were yesterday. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a weight he'd been carrying for decades slowly beginning to lift. Thank you, Mom. For what? For coming back, for telling me the truth, for giving me a chance to know you again. Eleanor smiled, and for a moment Marcus saw the young mother she had been fierce loving, willing to sacrifice everything for her child. Thank you for letting me. They stood together as the night deepened, mother and son reunited after 35 years of separation. Behind them, the clubhouse glowed with warmth and light. Inside, their family slept peacefully, dreaming of better tomorrows. 2 years later, on another Christmas Eve, Marcus stood at the window of Lily's Haven and watched the snow fall. The center had grown beyond anything he had imagined. 3 buildings now serving over 200 families a year. A staff of 40 professionals and 100 volunteers. National recognition as a model for community-based crisis intervention. And at the heart of it all, the Iron Wolves transformed from outlaws to guardians, from criminals to heroes. Daddy, Lily's voice rang out behind him. Someone's at the door. Marcus smiled at the word. Daddy. It had taken her 6 months to start using it, and he still felt a thrill every time he heard it. He and Grace had married the previous spring in a ceremony that brought together everyone who had played a part in their story. Raven had served as best woman. Eleanor had cried through the entire service, and Lily had insisted on being both flower girl and ring bearer. Now at 8 years old, Lily had become the unofficial mascot of Lily's Haven. She knew every child by name, every volunteer by face, in every corner of the building that bore her name. "Who is it, sweetheart?" Marcus asked, walking toward the entrance. "I don't know, but she looks scared." Marcus's heart clenched. He knew that look. He'd seen it on 100 faces over the past 2 years. He opened the door. A woman stood on the doorstep, maybe 30 years old, with a black eye and a split lip. Behind her, clutching her coat, was a boy who couldn't have been more than 4. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said, her voice trembling. "Someone told me, they said you help people here, people in trouble." Marcus looked at her, at the fear in her eyes, the bruises on her face, the desperate hope that anyone would finally listen. "You're not bothering us," he said, gently stepping aside. "Come in. You're safe now." The woman's face crumpled with relief. She took her son's hand and stepped across the threshold. Lily appeared beside Marcus, her expression serious and knowing beyond her years. "It's okay," she told the little boy. "I know you're scared, but my daddy and his friends help kids who are in trouble. You're going to be okay." The boy looked up at her with wide eyes. "Promise." Lily took his hand and smiled. "Promise, come on, I'll get you some hot chocolate." She led the boy toward the kitchen, her voice gentle and reassuring. Marcus watched her go, his heart swelling with pride. Grace appeared at his side, her arms slipping around his waist. Another one. Another one. "That's the 3rd this week." "I know." Marcus looked at the woman being guided toward the intake desk by Raven. "There are always more. There always will be." "Does that discourage you, Michelle?" "No." He pulled Grace closer. "It reminds me why we do this, why it matters." They stood together as the snow continued to fall, watching their family, their impossible, beautiful, hard-won family, welcome another broken soul into their midst. Somewhere in the kitchen, Lily was telling the scared little boy about the night she had knocked on a door in a blizzard, about the scary men who turned out to be angels, about the promise that had been kept and the family that had been built. And somewhere in heaven, Bear and Jake were watching over them, all their sacrifice honored by every life saved and every child protected. Marcus Blackwood had spent 40 years believing he was beyond redemption, that the darkness inside him was permanent, immutable, destined to consume everything it touched. He had been wrong, because on a frozen Christmas Eve, a 6-year-old girl had knocked on his door and asked him to save her mama. And in saving her, he had finally saved himself. That night, as the storm raged outside and the fire crackled in the hearth, Marcus tucked Lily into bed in the small room she insisted on keeping at Lily's Haven. "Tell me the story, Daddy," she said, her eyes already heavy with sleep. "The one about the night I found you." Marcus smiled and settled into the chair beside her bed, his favorite piece of furniture in the world. "Once upon a time," he began, "a very brave little girl knocked on the door of some rough men who didn't know they needed saving. And what happened? They learned that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. That family isn't about blood, but about choice, and that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be." Lily smiled and closed her eyes. "I like that story." "Me too, sweetheart, me too." He kissed her forehead and walked to the door. Before he turned off the light, he looked back at her one last time, this child who had changed everything, who had shown him what courage really meant, who had given him a reason to believe. "Daddy," her voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah, baby. I'm glad I found you." Marcus felt his heart overflow. "I'm glad you found me too." He turned off the light and closed the door, leaving Lily to dream of better tomorrows. Outside, the blizzard had finally stopped. The clouds parted, revealing a sky full of stars, and somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle engine roared to life, another iron wolf heading out to answer another call for help. The cycle continued. The legacy lived on, and Marcus Blackwood, the outlaw, who became a guardian, the monster who became a hero, the broken man who found his family, stood at the center of it all. Because sometimes the ones who need saving end up saving everyone else.